All right, so welcome to 3.3. We're going to talk a little bit about truth tables. And this is where the next three sections are going to take us as far as creating these truth tables. So first of all, we want to remember that we got to remember that negation is the opposite of the truth value. Okay, so if we look at P, and P is true, then not P is going to be false. If P is false, then not P is going to be true. Okay. We want to look at conjunctions. Now, conjunctions is our and. So it's true only when both components in my truth table are true. So to go ahead and construct our truth table, what we want to do is my P, I'm going to do 2 trues, 2 falses. And then my Q's are going to be alternating true, false, true, false. And that's always going to be true. Now remember, we got to go ahead and look at our and, okay? And it's true only when both components are true. Okay, so if P is true and Q is true, then P and Q must be true. If P is true but Q is false, both components are they contradict each other, so it's going to be false. Okay? If P is false and Q is true, that's also going to be false. If P is false and Q is false, remember it's true only when the components are both true, so this is also false. Okay. Go ahead and look at disjunction. Now, disjunction is false only when both components are false. Okay. So for P, I have 2 trues, 2 falses. For Q, I have true, false, true, false. Okay. Now, when P and Q are true, the disjunction says that they both must be false. So if they're both true, then this is true. Okay. If P and Q are true or false, right? Alternating, this is also true. If P is false, Q is true, this is also true. Now, here's where they're both false. This is going to be our false. Okay, so it's real important as we go through this section and through the rest of the chapter that you have a really good understanding of what disjunction and conjunction both do within truth table. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at example 1. This is on page 40. So I'm looking at a P and a Q, which are math problems. All right. And I have 3 plus 5 is equal to 8. Well, that is indeed true. And I have 2 times 7, which is 20. That's not true, that's false. Okay. And because I'm going to need them later on, I want to look at my not P. My not P is going to be false. And my not Q is going to be true. Okay. So I'm going to need those for the next 4 examples that I have going on here. Okay. I want to look at P and Q. Now remember, this is a conjunction, right? So it is only true if they're both true. Okay? So this is false, because one of these items is actually false. P and not Q. So we have P, which is true, not Q, which is true. They're both true, so this one is true. Not P, which is false, or Q, which is false. In this case, they are both false. Okay, so it is false. And then not P, which is true, or not Q, which is true. Okay, remember the only time that it's false is when they're both false, so this one is true. Okay, so we didn't need a truth table to do this one. We just needed to know what was going on with P and Q. Here we're going to go ahead and construct our first truth table here. Okay, so when you start with a truth table, you're given here a P, Harvard is a college, and a Q, Yale is a college. So we have a P and a Q. Okay. So my P, 2 trues, 2 falses, a Q, alternating. Okay. And now we have P and Q. Remember, and is only true when they're both true. So the only time they're true is at the top where we have a true and a true. So that gives me a true. The rest of these are going to be false. Okay. Now not P and Q. That means because the P and the Q here are in parentheses, we're taking the negation of this column. Okay. So if it's true, then this column must be false. Then these ones must be true because you got to take the opposite of what's in the previous column. Okay. So if I go ahead and look at these two statements, all right, Harvard is a college, that's true. Yale is a college, that's also true. All right. And I want to look at this statement that we created in our truth table. Okay. And we know that the P and the Q, P and Q we got from our column was true, but then we got to negate that true, so it's false. All right? So I want to write a false statement that represents this. So I'll say it is not true that Harvard is a college, and you need that and Yale is a college. No, notice I'm still not trying to change the wording of the original statements. All right, pretty fun so far, right? Not too bad. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is example 3, and this is going to be not P or Q. So again, we start off with our 2 trues, our 2 falses. Alternate true, false, true, false. Now P or Q is only false when they're both false. So we have true, 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 and here they're both false, so we get our false. And then again, we're going to negate this column for our last column. And we're going to get false, 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 and true. So you're just following the rules of and, or, and negation. Right. Here in exercise 5, we have not P and not Q. All right. Usually I like to go ahead and organize my P and the Q next to each other, then my not P and not Q, and then do the conjunction with this. All right. So P, true, true, false, false. Q, true, false, true, false. Not P, false, false, true, true. And not Q is false, true, false, true. Okay. Now remember, conjunction here, or and, means that between my 2 columns of not P and not Q, I need to find the ones that are true for both. Okay? So I have a false for not P, a false for not Q. This is going to be false. I have a false and a true, so this is going to be false. I have a true and a false, same thing going on here. This is going to be false. And here's the first time I have two trues, so this is going to be true. Okay. So as you're setting up your truth tables, make sure that you go ahead, don't skip any steps with it, because one of these trues or falses in the wrong place will totally throw off your entire answer. All right, going to look at example 7. So we have P and not Q, or not P. All right. So in this case, I did this a little bit differently because my not P is kind of by itself here, so I'm going to put him last. What I need to get is this entire statement, and it's easier if everything is all lined up together. Okay? So when you're creating your truth tables, you have a little flexibility on how to best organize when you have a compound statement like this. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with my P, true, true, false, false. My Q, true, false, true, false. And then my not Q, which will be false, true, false, true. And now for P and not Q, I'm comparing this one and this one to each other. Okay, so remember we're doing the and, so that means in order to be true, they both must be true. All right, so I have a true and a false. That's a false. I have a true and a true. That's going to be true. I have a false and a false, that's going to be false. And I have a false and a true, which is also going to be false. Now I'm going to go ahead and create my not P. So it's just the opposite of my P. So I have false, false, true, true. And now I want to do the comparison, and I ran out of room to write it. So this is going to be my last column here. Is my full statement, and I am comparing now these two columns. All right, so remember disjunction here is false only when they're both false. Okay, so my top column is false, and true and false give me a true, false and true give me a true, and false and true give me a true. Okay. Now, once in a while, when you finally get through your compound statements, you'll find that all of them are false or all of them are true. If they're all true, this one is not, is something special called a tautology. All right, and we'll talk about when they're all false and a little bit later with another example. But if you have a tautology, because some of your examples in this section do come across that, you will have those trues all the way in that last column with your compound statement. Example 9, this one is on page 44 of your book. All right, I study hard and I ace the final, or I fail the course. Okay, notice I have a comma right here. So this is going to be its own thing here. So I study hard, I'm going to call my P, okay? Now how am I going to group these other ones? I have an and, right? And ace the final, or I fail the course. This is like having it in parentheses. So ace the final, or fail the course. Okay, so these are all three different statements. This is the first one where we've actually had 3 items, okay? And when we have 3 items, our truth table gets really big really quick. So instead of having 4 items in our P and Q, we are now doubling it and going to 8, right? How are we organizing this? All right, so our P, we need 8 items, so we're going to have 4 trues, and 4 falses. Our Q, we're going to alternate by 2s. So we have true, true, false, false, true, true, false, false. Now our R is going to go every other. So we get true, false, true, false, true, false, true, false. Now I want to look at Q or R, these 2 columns. And remember, or is only false if they're both false. Okay. And we have a couple times where they're both false. Right here and at the bottom. All right. So we have true, 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 false. True, 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 and false. Okay. Now we want to look at P and Q or R. So now we're comparing this column and this column to get our final result here. Okay. Remember with and, it's only true if they're both true. Okay. So P is true, Q or R is true. This is true. P is true, Q or R is true. This is true. P is true, Q or R is true. This is true. P is true, Q or R is false. This is false. P is false, Q or R is true. This is false, because remember, they both have to be true. And P is false the rest of the way down, so the rest of these here are going to be false. Okay, and we have now completed our truth table. Okay. We got one more example. This one is in your book, and here I included the chart here in the video for you. And I have P, Q, and R. Okay. And I want to see if these are true or false. Okay. First one is 2% of American women are homely. Well, if I look for homely and I look at women, 2% are considered homely, so this statement is true. More than half are good looking. Okay, if we look at the good looking, none of these are at 50%. So even though they didn't say men or women, okay, it wouldn't be true for either one of these. Okay, so this statement is false. 5% of American men are strikingly attractive. Well, if we look at strikingly attractive and we look at men, it's at 2%, so this is also false. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at an idea and see if we can figure out if it's true or false. So I'm going to say 2% of American women are homely, or more than half are good looking, and it is not true that 5% of American men are strikingly attractive. Okay, so just from what we have here without creating a truth table, I want to figure out if this statement is true or false. Okay, so P or Q, remember disjunction as long as it's only false if they're both false. Well, P is true, F is false, so this must be true. So that compound statement, because one's true and one's false, it must be true unless they're both false. And not R. Well, R is false, So not are is true. And for conjunctions, if they're both true, the statement is true. So this is true. Okay? So hopefully it helps having sound on this one. I'll get to you. Make sure that you really understand how conjunction and disjunction work when setting up truth tables, and we are going to do some more elaborate truth tables in the next section.